Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you all for coming. So I'm going to introduce our honored speaker today. Alhamdulillah, it's an honor for us to have him. So he is a professor of Islam and biomedical ethics in Research Center for Islamic Legislation and Ethics in College of Islamic Studies in HBKU. He did his Islamic studies in English at Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt. And he was awarded his bachelor's degree with cum laude. And in 2002, he completed his MA degree in Islamic Studies also, with cum laude also, from Leiden University in the Netherlands. And in 2008, he received his PhD from the university. So Dr. Ghaly is someone who has also came once for another talk before on evolution. And inshallah, I think today we're going to have a talk that's just as exciting and as interesting.
Thank you very much.
Let's go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. And thank you very much for the kind invitation and for having me today. Thank you. I can also shout a little bit. It's not needed. In coordination with your colleagues, we chose the topic Sunnah and Ethics, what's relevance to our time. I want to start first with the concept Sunnah, because understanding key concepts like Sunnah is a very important one. Sometimes we think we do, but in fact, not really. So I thought we start with an informal discussion about what we mean by Sunnah. What do we mean when you hear Sunnah? What do you understand? There are no right and wrong answers. It's just your impression. Yes?
The actions and recommendations of the prophets and lives.
So whether it's actions or recommendations, or let's say in formal definitions, what he said, what he did, what he approved, but it must be related back to the Prophet. Do we agree on this?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. But what about the companions? What they said, what they did, what they approved. Is it also Sunnah? Do we think? No. What if the Prophet said, what if the companion said, I am doing this because he did this, but we don't have a hadith saying that he did this.
Well, wouldn't that be a hadith that he did it?
Huh?
Wouldn't, if a Sahaba
He said, I have seen him doing this.
If it's an authentic chain of narrations.
Yeah, this is a good one. What he said, what he did, let's go back to the Prophet. It seems we agree on this. But then authentic, you said authentic. You know, in the Quran, we don't have the authentication problem. So in the debates, for instance, among Muslim scholars, you don't have one who says that the Quran says, and the other one will say, no, but this is not actually Quran. It is said that it's Quran, but actually not. We don't have this problem in the Islamic tradition. We have the Mus'haf, we know where it begins, where it ends, so no problem. But in the Sunnah we have authentication problem. Not everything related to the Prophet is actually prophetic. Isn't this?
Yes.
And it seems that the companions themselves had sometimes debates about this. Is it really this what he did or not? And you have a very famous book related to his wife, Sayyidah Aisha, written by Zarkashi, I think, or Al-Shawkani, I'm not sure. It's called Al-Isaba فيما استدركته عائشة على الصحابة. So the companions, they have an opinion about the Prophet did or said, and Sayyidah Aisha has a different opinion. She thinks it's not right. This is not, what you think about the Prophet is not the right one. And it seems she was in a better position, in her opinion, against all the other companions. Why did she have a better position?
She was the wife of the Prophet. She spent all the time.
She had access to information that the others didn't. So she was living with him day and night. She was seeing him praying, angry, happy, frustrated, everything. Like I can act now that I'm very open-minded person, funny and this stuff, but when I go back home, I cannot continue doing this anymore. So the true character of the person happens at home. Sayyidah Aisha had access to this, they didn't. And of course, very intimate things like how he sleeps, how he wakes up, etc., how he deals with his wives, they couldn't say this, but she had. For instance, one of the discussions among the Sahaba, the position of the Prophet, what is the Sunnah here? A woman went to Abdullah ibn Umar, who is her brother. Abdullah ibn Umar is the brother of Aisha. And he said, no, he's not the brother, sorry. He's the son of Umar al-Khattab, not the son of Abu Bakr. Anyhow, he's a Sahabi, very important. And he related many hadith about the Prophet ﷺ. And a woman went to him and she said, when I have to do ghusl, the full wash of the body, should the water reach to every single hair when I have the how do you call it, the fire, when the braids? Should I have to stretch them out so that water comes to every single hair? And he said, yes, of course, because it is a full wash, so you have to wash everybody, every part in your body, and hair is part of the body by very simple logic. And he is a man. He doesn't have to do this, so he will never think, is this very difficult, very easy? They asked him, he used the logic, analogy, and then Sayyidah Aisha knew about this answer. Of course, she was living with the Prophet. She did the full bath with him. He saw her, so she has better information. But her answer was quite a bit funny and even sarcastic to some extent. She said, Rahimallahu Abdullah ibn Umar, may God have mercy with him. Why wouldn't he have advised women better to shave their hair? It would have been much better and easier than such fatwa, telling them that they have to wash every single hair. And she said that I had this with the Prophet ﷺ, and I just put water on my hair and I don't have to stitch anything. There is no such difficulty and you don't have to be so sophisticated in your answer. So here, what is the Sunnah actually? Did the Prophet say this actually? Did he do this? It's sometimes a question, and it is a question of authenticity. This is a simple one during the lifetime of the Prophet. But after the following generations, the Tabi'un and so on, until our time, it becomes much more difficult and much more complex. So I want to know from you, if you doubt that the Prophet said this or did this or approved this, how do you check yourself? The authenticity, what do you do? To make sure that it is coming from the Prophet actually?
The sahha of the hadith, whether it was Hassan or Gharib or Sahih.
Yes, but how do you do this? Practically, very practically. Do you check internet and to see is this hadith sahih or not? What do you do?
Check scholarly commentary that's available on the internet about the authenticity of the hadith. What different scholars said about the hadith.
Also,
What's
the source?
What books will you check?
Is it available in Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, Ibn Majah, Tirmidhi?
Albani authenticated and
Okay.
other
Traditionally speaking, we have 6 canonical collections, which we call Al-Kutub al-Sitta, including the most reliable traditions attributed to Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. At the top of it, we have Bukhari and Muslim, because they made it a condition upon themselves that they will mention in their books only what is authentic. The others didn't make this as a condition. And the other 4, Sunan Tirmidhi, Dawood, Nasa'i, and there is a disagreement. What is the number 6? According to the majority, it's Ibn Majah, and according to the minority, it's Muwatta, Imam Malik. And the majority used Ibn Majah, not because Ibn Majah is more authentic than Muwatta, but because the content of Muwatta is more or less included in all the other 5. So if you make Muwatta Malik number 6 qua content, you actually don't have a 6th book, because you will not have new hadith, but Ibn Majah does. Ibn Majah has some hadith which are not in the other 5. Bukhari and Muslim, they said it's authentic. What I mentioned in my book, I say it is authentic. The other 5 didn't say this. But what did they give to us in order to make sure that it is right, that it is authentic or not? What did they do?
They have like levels.
They mentioned the isnad.
Yeah.
You know, the isnad chain of transmission. They say to you, I heard this from X, and this X heard it from W, until you go to A, that's the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And then you can check the chain of narrators to see that if it is authentic or not. Of course, nowadays, if we speak about the relevance, we have the big question, how to know that hadith was authentic or not, is coming back to the forefront. And this was always a big question. This was always a big question. As I raised to you, and I said, what if the companion said this? You said it's not Sunnah. It's something that we respect and appreciate, but it will not be part of Sharia, because at the end, a human being who didn't receive revelation. So the status of the Prophet is completely different. So throughout history, Muslims were always busy with the question, did the Prophet say this actually or not? Here, of course, doesn't mean me only, but it means the narrators. So they were also female. By the way, we have many statements said by specialists in this science saying that when you have a female in the chain of narrators, 99% it is authentic. Women in the history of hadith didn't lie as much as the men did. Although we may think now that women would like to lie more than men, but in the hadith, we don't have evidence to support this claim. They are not as many as men, because they had to travel, go through different continents where the narrators are. It was not very easy for the women, yes, but they narrated, and they narrated a lot. And what they narrated is more or less usually authentic. So we have the science of narrators, ilm al-rijal. And ilm al-rijal verifies the character of every single person mentioned in the hadith. So for instance, we will check if this person is used to tell lies or not. His character, was he a pious person or not? Where did he live and when exactly is very important. Why? Because I may say, I hear X saying that he heard from, and then we go further. But then when we check the X, we will see that he died, let's say, for the sake of argument, 1970. And I was born 1975. Then we know it's impossible. Even if he says, I hear, and people do not know him as a liar, so it seems he made a mistake. Maybe not intentionally, but at the end he made a mistake, and there is a problem with the authentication of this prophet. We have a very sophisticated science in this regard, and it is one of the unique disciplines within the Islamic tradition. We don't have this in other traditions. We don't have this in other sciences. We don't have this in other religions. So if we want to check, for instance, the authentication of Bible or the Gospels, according to the same criteria we use for hadith, not for the Quran, just for hadith, it will be quite problematic. So it is something very unique. So nowadays, we have many questions and many discussions saying that Al-Bukhari actually is not authentic, and Muslim is actually not authentic, or Ibn Majah or Muwatta. And what they have done is actually they wanted to be famous and this stuff. The social media is full of these claims, and I don't want to say, I don't want to use harsh words, but anybody who makes such big claims is somebody who didn't study. It's impossible that you will read only the biography of Bukhari, for instance, and then you will say such thing about him. The collections, the 6 collections we have are not 100% authentic. Even the collection of Bukhari was criticized sometimes by some traditions, Muhaddithin and Muslim, and the other 5 collections. But this is a type of discussions within what we call the scholarly community. The scholarly community. It's not that because I have an account on Facebook or on Twitter and I want to have a lot of likes and then I say whatever I like. It's a scholarly community. Go, study, investigate, and then say whatever you like. There is no problem whatsoever. These discussions were going on throughout the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, and we have much more than these 6 books. For instance, the best book is Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. And Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal is one of the towering figures in the Islamic tradition, but his Musnad was not included in the best 6, for instance. So there is no, maybe I as Bukhari or as Muslim or anybody as Muhammad, any individual, I have my own biases, maybe. But will these biases, will I be able to deceive the scholarly community throughout centuries and centuries and centuries? Can this be imagined with any stretch of imagination? Would this happen in computer science? Would this happen in biology? That someone is making a lie trying to deceive the people and the whole scholar community has been deceived for centuries? It's just impossible. So just give big statements like Bukhari is nothing for me, or Muslim is nothing for me, or Ibn Majah is nothing for me. This is quite problematic, and it is because of the fluidity of information which we have now. سيولة المعرفة. Knowledge doesn't have limits. It doesn't have a tradition. Everybody can say whatever they like. But I hope that we will, especially the young generation of Muslims, will appreciate the sciences which have been developed throughout centuries in the Islamic tradition in order to answer the question which we are just discussing now. Is it authentic? Is it true that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ did? And this question of authentication is an ongoing question. It's still an ongoing question. You can participate in this question, but according to the tradition. According to the tradition. You come here to Carnegie Mellon in order to study, for instance, computer science. Once you do this, you contribute to the field. But if you didn't do this, for instance, you were not entitled to join Carnegie Mellon because your GPA is very low. You see, these people are biased. They don't know what they are doing. I will develop the computer science myself. Would anybody take you seriously? This is the same in Hadith sciences, and this is the same in the Sunnah that we have now. What I want to say before leaving the issue of authentication, it is the issue of the scope. Does everything related to the Prophet make part of the Sunnah which we have to follow?
Yes.
So I mean everything in Bukhari or Muslim or in the Kutub Sitta that the Prophet ﷺ said or did or approved. It doesn't mean that these things are binding for us because it is Sunnah. No, why?
By definition, like some of the actions he used to emphasize on, but he himself did not do it every single time. So
Because sometimes he said something, but he did something else. Okay?
yes. So that shows that it's not binding on the rest of us as well. And something he did not, he just recommended that if it's good that you do so, but it's not binding on you, then it's even clearer.
So sometimes because he said, but he didn't do, or he did completely the opposite. Are there other possibilities that would make the Sunnah not binding?
I think when also things that are very exceptional to the Prophet.
Yes, this is also one that the ulama said what the Prophet ﷺ did, specifically what he did. He was not only a prophet, but he was also a human being. He was also a human being. So this human being has his own inclinations, preferences, not necessarily dictated by revelation. Like we know, mentioned in the collections of the Sunnah, that the Prophet ﷺ used to like the needs of the shoulder of the sheep. Does it mean that it is Sunnah to eat the meat of the shoulder? No, he liked it. As a human being, as someone who's living in Arabian Peninsula at this time, this is what people used to eat, and he liked it. But is it possible that I dislike this and I remain a good Muslim? Yes, I can. So sometimes sid and did are not identical, so this needs more verification. What happened? We need to know what happened first and what happened later, and is this abrogating the first, or can we combine? There's a big science, as I mentioned, about this, and as part of the collection of Ulum Hadith. Sometimes because he didn't know it in his capacity as prophet, but as a human being. But it's even more complex than this. He was prophet, he was a human being, he was a political leader. He was an army leader, he was a judge. In all these situations, this gives a simple example. We have this also in the collections of the hadith, authentic hadith. One of the wives of the companions went to the Prophet ﷺ complaining about her husband that he is stingy. He doesn't give her enough money for her and her children. The Prophet ﷺ verified the case, knew about it, the woman is telling the truth, and he told her, خُذِي مَا يَكْفِيكِ وَوَلَدَكِ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. So take what you need and what's sufficient for you and your children, بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, according to the norm. According to the norm. Which means she can take it without telling him. Because if she asks, he will not give her. Okay. Can use this as a binding statement for every woman that she can do this with her husband? You think? Yes?
I don't think so because
You think or you don't?
I don't think so.
You don't think so. Why?
Maybe she didn't have family who would support her at that time. So
No, it doesn't matter. Even if she is the richest. The man has to maintain his family. Has to. And the ulama says, imagine that she's very rich and he's very poor. So out of kindness, she has to support her husband. They say no. He can borrow money from her, but will be a debt that he has to pay once he is rich.
Yeah.
So part of being the husband means you have to take care of the family financially. So that the family is rich or not, this doesn't matter. But why? Does anybody think that we can use this statement because it's part of the Sunnah and we say the woman, we make a rule, general rule, that the woman can always take money from her husband behind his back if she thinks that he is stingy. Can we make this a rule based on the Sunnah?
Yes.
And we give open permission to the woman, the wife to do this? You think so?
I think it would be a fatwa specifically like case to case.
No, I say a general rule.
No.
Can we make this a general rule? Because the Prophet said it. It's Sunnah. So it's not something bad. In this case.
But then stingy is something that's objective.
Yeah, stingy.
That's
Define
the issue.
stingy.
That's the issue. I can say that, imagine a wife, she wants to buy a bag. It's a bag, we call it, the little bags for the women.
And
I understood that it can be quite expensive. I didn't know this before. Now I know. She goes to one of the malls here, and alhamdulillah, we have enough of these shops here in Qatar. She goes there, and he says, no, but this is too expensive. This is 10,000 riyal. It's impossible. She's, oh, how stingy you are. my friend, my colleague in the university, she said, I can't. She did it, and her husband, no problem at all. Okay. Can we permit this, for instance? Why? Because stingy, who is stingy and what's stingy? This is a matter of interpretation. That's why the ulama said the statement coming from the Prophet ﷺ, it is in his capacity as a judge, qadi. So there must be someone neutral who will verify this. So as a husband, you think, I'm not stingy. This woman is squandering her money. She thinks you are stingy. Okay, so there must be a neutral, a third party who can decide. And if you are stingy, how much you can take? What's this bil ma'ruf according to the norm? What is the norm in Qatar? What is the norm in Egypt? What is the norm in Syria? This all differs. So there must be an independent body, a neutral body with expertise that can judge in this. So the general rule that we have, if the woman has problems, she can go to the judiciary power, but she cannot decide herself. As long as the husband also cannot decide himself about what the woman is doing with the money. Who is stingy, who is squandering the money, this needs a judge or a judiciary power or authoritative body that we can create in the modern time. So again, what is Sunnah and what's binding in the Sunnah is not that easy to determine. So we have said that it must be authentic. We spoke about the authentication, spoke about the 6 collections of hadith, etc. It's not necessary that when it is mentioned in these 6 collections that it is by default authentic, and there are still disagreements among the ulama al-hadith that something is authentic or not upon some ahadith, like what they have disagreements about specific juristic rulings, ahkam fiqhiyya. But even if we agree that it is authentic, it doesn't mean that you can put it into practice immediately. Sometimes we have disagreements between what he said and what he did. Even if he did it, we don't know for sure that he did it from his capacity as prophet. It can be in different capacities. How do we know this? There is a science which we call usul al-fiqh, Islamic legal theory. It's also a very sophisticated one. If you study Sharia, this is always one of the most difficult subjects that you can study because of all these problems. So you have things which look clear, but you can always be problematized. And you need very strict theories and very rigorous reasoning in order to come to conclusions about these issues. So this is about the concept of the Sunnah. Now about ethics. When it comes to ethics, the issue is much easier than when it comes to the rulings. When it comes to ethics, the relationship between the Quran and Sunnah must be clarified. When the wife Aisha, Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, we just spoke about her in the book Al-Ijaba fi Mustadrakat Aisha al-Sahaba, when she was asked about the Prophet's character, Prophet Muhammad, she said that, described to us his character. كيف كان خلق النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. She gave a very short sentence saying, كان خلقه القرآن. His character was the Quran. Religious scholars speak about the phenomenon of Quranization. And the Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم كان قرأنا. So whatever you read in the Quran, was personified by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, put into practice. Yes.
Was that based on that hadith?
No, this is the meaning of her hadith. Okay. She said, how do you know his character? Read the Quran, then this is the character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is of course clearly stated in the Quran. وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. So the Quran himself gave him the statement, the certificate, that his character is noble, is great. And the Quran uses the word ala. Normally speaking, when you describe someone's character, you say you have. وَإِنَّ لَكَ خُلُقٌ عَظِيمٍ. You have a noble character. But وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى, ala, it means always above. So he stands, when it comes to the noble character, at the very top of it. فَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. So they're really ideal and exemplary. And anybody who reads his biography of the Prophet ﷺ, if you don't believe in him, at least you will respect him as a great person when it comes to character. Especially when you hear about his life at home. Because as I said, outside, I can always deceive the people. But I cannot continue this acting also inside the home. Everybody's character gets revealed inside, by the way, not only the husbands and wives, but also children. They can act very polite when you visit people, but when they come home, you see the real character also. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he was described by his wives in particular, and the children who were living with him at home, you will see the noble character of him. The noble character of the Prophet ﷺ, personifying what's in the Quran, was the subject of many books throughout Islamic history. One of the early books written on al-akhlaq was Kitab Ibn Abi al-Dunya. Ibn Abi al-Dunya, from the 2nd century after Hijrah, the 3rd century after Hijrah. So around 8th, 9th century, he wrote a book, Al-Akhlaq. And the book is translated into English in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. It's a magnificent book. And it is based on Sunnah. So he's only narrating what the Prophet ﷺ said and what he did. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as we mentioned before, he's acting not only as prophet but also as a human being. And as a human being who is living in the Arabian Peninsula in the 7th century. People in the 7th century had also characters and had also morals, good ones and bad ones. And he is one of these people. So when the Prophet ﷺ spoke about his mission, he said, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Literally, I have been sent, I have been given the capacity of prophet, mainly, or you can even translate exclusively, to perfect the noble character. إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. إِنَّمَا here, I have been sent me, or exclusively, is indicative of the position of ethics in the Islamic tradition. Something which we greatly miss nowadays. Because we have an obsession, and I argue that this obsession is because of modernity, that we have everything must be put into a box. You have to know if you are a specialist in the IT, or in biology, or in Islamic studies, or in medicine. You have to be compartmentalized as a Salafi or liberal, or there are boxes and you have to fit into one of them. And when it comes to the actions, your action must be black or white, good or bad. And we took this, we revived the fiqhi position, everything must be halal or haram. But there is also the ethics. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was missioned, was sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he said, mainly or even exclusively, in order to perfect the noble character. These people in the Arabian Peninsula had their own morality, and it is clear that a great part of it was magnificent and very good. The book of Ibn Abi Dunya, speaking about al-akhlaq, he's basing himself on a statement attributed to Aisha, speaking about 60 plus characteristics that people in the Arabian Peninsula had before Islam. 67 or 65, 65, 67 khasla, which were widespread among the Arabs, and they were all good. Like being a good neighbor, husnul jiwar, like al-wafa'u bil-ahdi, respecting your word, hospitality, etc., etc. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he found an environment, he found the best in this environment, and he wanted to perfect it. He does not start from scratch, although he has a revelation. So we can say the revelation is self-sufficient. So you don't need anything from outside. He didn't do this. And this is a very important lesson for us. Whatever people you deal with, whatever context you are living in, there must be something good in it. Imam Ghaly says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not create absolute evil. In Allah, la yakhluqu ash-sharra al-mutlaq. It does not exist in life. And Imam al-Qayyim, in one of his books, he dedicated more than 30 pages explaining how this would apply to Iblis. So you can say there is no absolute evil. And what about Iblis, Shaitan? Does he have some good in it? Its existence, he dedicated like more than 30 pages explaining the positive aspects of having Shaitan in life. You can read the you can read the book, but at least you know you will know the good and bad in yourself through the Shaitan. Your weak and strong parts, you know this because of the whispering of the Shaitan. We know the good and the bad people because of the Shaitan, etc. And you know also the humans who can excel very much and supersede the Shaitan. So it's whatever environment we live, whatever environment we live, there must be something good in it, and the art, as part of the mission of the Prophet Muhammad is to discover this and work on it, improve it, and invest in it, in an to perfect, not starting from scratch, because as humans, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about us, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. And the nafs here is a neutral term, is a human being. The human being is born with a built-in good part and a built-in bad part. So we don't become good just because we are religious or because we are Muslims. We are good because we are humans. There is part of us, because of the very nature of our humanness, that we are good. But there is part that we are bad. And the main idea is to perfect the good and suppress and address and handle the bad part. So Ibn Abi Dunya in his very important and seminal and pioneer work about ethics, he used it in order to highlight the aspects of ethics in the Sunnah, starting by the aspects or the morals or the values which were widespread in the environment of the Prophet ﷺ when he was born, and what he developed and added and improved later on. So for instance, there were also very bad habits in the Arabian Peninsula, the most important of which was the shirk, idolatry, that they worship the idols, for instance. It is a very bad thing from an Islamic perspective, but there were also other things like they would kill the girls, and according to some narrations, also the boys, when they have difficulties of poverty. And they had drinking wine, for instance. It was a source of pride, on it. So there were surely bad things, but there were also surely very good things upon which the Prophet ﷺ worked on. What the Prophet ﷺ did is a complete transformation of the life of people who followed him. And this is the core business of the mission of the Prophet ﷺ. You make yourself better, and you make people around you better. If you didn't do this, the more you do this, the closer you become to the Sunnah, and the less you do it, the further you become from the Sunnah. It's not about that you do what's halal and you avoid what's haram. It's much more than this. The core business is لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. So you can study the biography of any of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ before Islam and after Islam. And you see the transformation that these people had in life. We can mention so many examples. Take the example of Umar ibn al-Khattab, for instance, in dealing with his wife. Umar ibn al-Khattab is Meccan, Rajul Makki, from the Arabian Peninsula in his age or in his time or in his century. There is a very nice, amazing and revealing hadith, a very long one, discussion between him, Umar ibn al-Khattab, and Abdullah ibn Abbas, who is a young companion. So Umar ibn al-Khattab is telling him the stories which can bring more wisdom to Abdullah ibn Abbas, this young companion, about how they were in Mecca and how they became in Medina. So Umar al-Khattab is a Meccan. He had his wife. He's dealing with his wife as Meccans deal with their wives. Just to give a very simple example, he was telling Abdullah ibn Abbas, And this continued for a while after his Islam, because it's not an overnight change. Such transformation takes a while. Umar ibn Khattab will have a discussion with his wife. Umar ibn Khattab will have an issue which will busy his mind to the extent that he will not be attentive to what his wife is saying. You know, when someone is completely obsessed with a problem, so imagine I will lose my work, I lost my money, etc. Or for the researchers, you are working on a paper and you don't know what's going around you. This happens, and this will happen with you also, inshallah, in the very near future. You lose connection with reality. So whenever he has this problem, he would be sitting, and he was telling Abdullah ibn Abbas, we were real men. كنا رجالا عن حق. We were real men. What does this mean? That his wife cannot ask him what is occupying your mind. She cannot say this because it's not her business. She's a woman. Men only can discuss these big issues. And if she did, imagine, she forgot her limits and she would ask him what is busy in your mind. Then he would take a pole from the tent and he would hit her with the pole to fix her spoiled character. Then they became Muslims. They went to Medina. And he's saying to Abdullah, so Medina is the Medina city. As if you are coming from a village like myself, I'm a villager, and then I go to Cairo. Of course, big culture shock. Big culture shock. How people in Medina deal with each other. So Medina was the city, the Medina. And it is clear that the habits of women and men in Medina were not like them. Were not like these Bedouins. They were civilized. So Abdullah ibn Umar says, فَطَفِقَ نِسَاؤُنَا يَأْخُذْنَ مِنْ أَدَبِ نِسَاءِ الْأَنصَارِ. Our women, those coming from Mecca, started to learn from the habits of women in Medina. What's happening with women in Medina? That, recall the case of Umar ibn Khattab, he's busy with something, losing touch with reality. His wife cannot ask him, why are you busy? No, in Medina, she will not only ask, he's telling Abdullah ibn Abbas, she will not only ask with what are you busy, but she will give him an advice how to solve the solution, and she can say to him, what you think of is wrong. Just listen to me. This was, of course, for the people coming from Mecca. These are not real men, these people in Medina, and we cannot continue like this. But the problem is that women from Mecca, they found it very nice, and they were so happy with this. And he said also, and sometimes our men, the Meccans, got married with their women. So they also get married with women from Medina. What happened to this person, Umar ibn Khattab, after a while when he became the Khalifa? So he has the full power. And the Khalifa, at this time, especially from the time of Umar ibn Khattab onward, they were not ruling a specific geography, a specific geographical setting, a couple of kilometers. They were ruling greater part of the inhabited space on earth. So a real ruler. Someone went to him to ask him about, to complain to him about his wife. So one of the Muslims, he had problems with his wife, so he's going to the Caliph to solve the problem. When he approached home, he found that the wife of Umar ibn Khattab is shouting at him. And not just shouting, so we say in Egypt, she's giving him very tough time. And the person heard about it, and Umar is not responding. So the man left. He didn't knock the door. He thought, if this is the situation of the Caliph, he cannot help you. and Umar Khattab happened that he opened the door incidentally at this time, and he saw him, and he said, "Were you coming to me?" He said, "Yes." He said, "What's the issue?" He said, "It was not a big deal. It was not a big deal." He said, "No, see, no problem. Don't worry." He said, "No. He said, "Please, I swear, you have to say what was your problem. He said, I had a problem, but I came to you to find that you have a bigger one. So I thought you cannot solve your own problem. How can you solve mine? He said, what's the bigger problem I have? He said, I have seen your wife shouting at you, etc. And I had some issues with my woman. So I thought, so Umar al-Khattab, it's a long issue. It's also recorded in our historical report, telling him why is it so important to be patient on these issues. And what we now hear with the couple therapy and all this stuff, that whenever you have two people, and we have experiments about this, if you put two people in whatever way, they will, scratch with each other. They will have problems. Any two humans, they will have problems. And the least problems will be between a man and woman who love each other, who get married to each other, etc. These are the least problems. So imagine to live day and night with your colleague at work, the one that you think the most ideal person in the world. Try to live with this person as many hours as you do with your wife or your husband, and you will see telling results. And we know this when we travel for conferences or for long stays outside, or for people who go to Hajj, at least. When you travel and you stay for a while with someone, you will see the problems. Umar al-Khattab was trying to tell him this. What happened with this Umar al-Khattab, who killed one of his daughters when he was before Islam, when he was beating his wife with the pole of a tent, to the extent that he becomes a caliph, and he was such a patient person, not only with himself, but even telling his subjects to do the same. It is the transformation that the Sunnah and the character of the Prophet Muhammad did. And Umar al-Khattab is not an exception. You can study the biographies of the companions and even the following generations. We have, and by this I stopped, the last example I mentioned, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak is not a companion. He's a very pious Muslim, very important, but he doesn't belong to the generation of the companions who was living, if I'm not mistaken, in Khorasan, somewhere, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, this area in Asia. His neighbor, who's a non-Muslim, if I'm not mistaken, a Jewish neighbor, he wanted to sell his house, the neighbor. And the neighbor offered his house for sale, and he said it costs, let's say, $1,000. And the people said to him, but this is not the market price. The market price is 500. Why are you selling it for 1,000? He said 500 for the house and 500 for being the neighbor of Abdullah ibn Mubarak. So he's also selling his neighborhood. You see the people who can trade well. So he is selling this. When I was living in the Netherlands, the case was completely the opposite. Whenever you have a place where you have concentration of Muslims, the prices of the houses will decrease because nobody wants to live there, because this is the place for Muslims. These are just very simple, shocking examples to show that when ethics, so these Muslims maybe pray 5 times a day, fasting every Ramadan, etc. But the core business of the mission of the Prophet Muhammad is not practiced. So your value in life will also decrease. From the 500 or the 50% extra in the price of the houses to decrease in the houses. So I think that the main lesson that I hope I myself and you will take from this is that the Sunnah is not only about rulings for what is halal and what's forbidden, but it's also for improving your moral character. And one of the best disciplines which worked upon this moral character of the Prophet ﷺ as part of the practice was the Sufi literature. I know some of you, especially here now, will have difficulties with hearing the term Sufi or Sufism or whatever, but this is one of the disciplines which made great work on how to highlight the model of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in the Sunnah is a model for a principled person. A principled person. There is a book written by Al-Qastallani called Al-Mawahib Al-Laduniya. I don't know if it's available in English. And he writes in chapters, and in every chapter he would write his etiquettes in, and then he mentions the subject. For instance, one of the subjects he was mentioning, his etiquettes in eating. Adabuhu fi ta'am, something which is very important for us here in Qatar or in the Gulf, or anybody living in a rich country in general. And then he starts the first sentence under this, and he said, وَأَمَّا الشَّبَعُ فَبِدْعَةٌ ظَهَرَتْ بَعْدَ الْقَرْنِ الْأَوَّلِ. Having full stomach is a bid'ah, is an innovation which started to become widespread after the first 100 years of the death of the Prophet. Prophet ﷺ never ate too much. According to some reports, said that we cannot say you can never, if you want to be a pious Muslim, you can never have a full stomach. We cannot say this. This will be too much. Why? Because it happened sometimes that the Prophet ﷺ said, أكلت حتى شبعت. Sometimes we have some instances in which he said, I ate till I became full. But to have it as a phenomenon in your life, and when we make statistics about obesity in the world, then the Muslims would be at the top. This is again very much far from taking Sunnah as a model for ethics in the modern time. I will stop here. We can talk too much. I will stop here. If you have any questions or any comments, I'll be more than happy to respond. Thank you very much for listening.